or one thing that you need to understand is when they're writing about some of this stuff, when you talk about negative relationships and positive relationships, or negative correlations and positive correlations, it's confusing. And so one of the things that I noticed, it said at the top of page 144, for example, several decades of research have provided empirical support for the negative relationship between social support and perceived stress in general, and social support as an important mediator of stress. Negative relationship would mean that when one goes down, the other one goes up. So basically the idea is the more social support we get, that goes up, stress goes down. That doesn't mean there's a negative relationship from just the way we sort of talk about what a negative relationship is in our everyday life. This is science-y negative relationship. So the more social support we have, the more it goes up. Positive relationship would mean the more something goes up, the more something else goes up, and the more something goes down, the more another thing goes down. So a positive relationship between social support and perceived stress would be the more support we have, the more stress we have. So it's just, academics, they only make sense to one another. But there's tons of really good information here. They talk about issues of stress and well-being in cancer patients. And obviously, they talk about prolonged exposure to stress has been found to impair immune system response, increase risk for hypertension, heart disease, and stroke, and all of that type of stuff. But what they're talking about basically is that social support can reduce this stress, which can limit all this other stuff going on. So there's lots of different studies here. As I said, cancer studies, stress studies. There's a couple interesting models here. The buffering model and the main effects model. Buffering, I mean, you know what a buffer is. It's just something in between something. And so buffer model basically says, or the buffering model of social support generally says, or posits, because academics have to say, I posit that, instead of I think that, or I would argue that. Posits that an individual's social network helps to shield or reduce the amount of stress he or she may experience when encountering both major crises and everyday sources of stress. So the more sort of social capital we have and the more support we have, it acts as a buffer to stress. Okay, that makes sense. Main effect, a model of social support asserts that there is a direct relationship between social support and health outcomes. Positive interactions with one's support network in everyday relationship appear to elevate a person's mood, reduce stress, and make people more resilient to stressful situations. Yeah, okay, so there's a direct cause-effect. So it's not just a buffer, direct cause-effect relationship. And all of this is sort of implying, at least, even more benefits to support generally, but particularly implying social support via online communication or computer-mediated social support. And there's more stuff on the bottom of page 144 talking about found Owen, Clapoy, Roth, Schuster, and Bellis found that participation within an online support group for cancer patients predicted higher quality of life and reduced stress. More recently, Wright, Raines, and Banis found that computer-mediated support group users who had more positive perceptions of the benefits of weak tie support, I'm actually getting into that stuff, from their group had reduced levels of stress. So there's lots of stuff about, they talk about a meta-analysis, and a meta-analysis is just sort of like a big lit review. It's an analysis of Just like meta-communication is communication about communication, a meta-analysis is an analysis of analyses. So basically, 28 computer-mediated support group studies they looked at. And they found, across those studies, participation in computer-mediated social support groups led to increased social support, decreased depression, increased quality of life, and increased self-efficacy in terms of managing health conditions. I'm going to empower myself to go seek out help. I'm not going to give up. So yeah. So like, I mean, again, lots of cool benefits. Now, the next section, the theoretical stuff. And I'm trying, sorry with my visual puns here, I was just trying to keep myself entertained a little bit. Lots of little theories. They want to end this chapter with offering some theories that are out there that they think we can apply to computer-mediated social support groups. And then, so the first theory here that they offer is the theory of weak ties. And then I have a picture of ties just because, you know, as my nieces say, I have a couple of nieces in Minnesota. One's a sophomore at North Dakota State University, and the other one's still in high school. And they call me Punny. So basically, CMC gives us greater access to weak ties, which basically means they're not strong. Strong ties are the ties that we have with our friends, closest friends, and our family. Weak ties are, as they, you know, that they sound like, you know, they're not as strong, and we don't know them very well, and they come and go. But weak ties can be very, very important. There are lots of advantages to weak ties. And sometimes weak ties last only a week. So you have weak ties. There's a lot of stuff here, bottom of page 145 and the top of page 146. Researchers have found that weak tie network members can afford a number of advantages. So weak ties are better over stronger ties when it comes to providing support in sensitive and problematic circumstances. According to Alderman et al., which means Alderman and all of his or her co-authors, weak ties may provide a vital lifeline to those who lack the requisite skills or the cognitive skills for intimate relationships. So if you don't have a lot of strong support, then these weak ties are important. And then there's just a lot of information about why weak ties can be better than close ties. We're going back to this notion of oftentimes our friends and family sort of see things the same. It goes back to the homogeneity versus the heterogeneity. And also going back to this idea of sort of role obligation. Sometimes people feel like because they're friends and family, they have to be sensitive or care for you, and they really don't care as much perhaps as somebody online who's dealing with the same stuff as you. A weak tie, but still they might be actually more caring. And so there's lots of various things going on there. And the bottom of page 147, I think, really sums up the whole sort of weak tie thing. It says, because other computer-mediated support group members may also be contending with similar concerns, the similarity between members in terms of health concerns increases empathy and understanding of the situation and fosters opportunities for other types of emotional support such as affirmation and validation. In addition, remember, all these are weak ties. These are people you don't know all that well. They're not your friends or your family, but this is the stuff they can do for you. In addition, because of their reduced emotional attachment, so I'm not emotionally attached to you per se, you're not my BFF, you're not your mom, my dad, you're not my sister, you're not my wife, you're not my husband, you're not my dog, you're not my cat, you're not my mongoose, you're not my monkey, you're not my rat, you're not my cat. I already said cat, I'm trying to rhyme now. You're not my bat, You're not my roach. You're not nothing. Okay. So again, they're not friends or family here. So because of their reduced emotional attachment, weak tie network members may be more adept at providing objective feedback about health problems and are generally more willing to discuss risky topics compared to one strong tie network of family and friends. So that's important stuff. That's really, really interesting. Next slide, another cool theory, social processing theory. And I have this disgusting visual pun of meat processing, social processing, meat processing. This is sort of no-brainer stuff, I think. Basically, the whole idea with social processing theory is that we try to make ourselves look the best we can. And we try to downplay the bad stuff, I guess. We try to portray ourselves in socially desirable and favorable ways. And then other people oftentimes have idealized visions of who we are and everything like that. Because we tend to overvalue, they say, what is minimal information that we really get from text-based info. We don't know, when you just are reading something somebody wrote, you don't have all the nonverbal cues and everything like that. So that's the idea. But here, how this is good, it might sound bad, but idealized perceptions, and this is page 148, and optimal self-presentation in the computer-mediated communication process tend to intensify in the feedback loop, and this can lead to what Walther labeled as hyper-personal interaction, or a more intimate and socially desirable exchange than face-to-face interactions. And that whole idea of hyper-personal is very important. Hyper-personal interaction is enhanced when no face-to-face relationship exists, so that users construct impressions and present themselves without the interference of environmental reality. Hyper-personal interaction has been found to skew perceptions of relation patterns in positive ways. So it's skewed, but in positive ways. In some cases, computer-mediated relationships may exceed, even though it's skewed, exceed face-to-face interactions in terms of intensity, including within online support groups. Long and short of it, some online communication can be more personal, more everything, I suppose, than face-to-face communication, which is really interesting and goes way back against the folks who would have that either-or thinking that say that face-to-face communication is the best. Hyper-personal can actually be, as the name exists, more personal than face-to-face communication. Okay, the final little cool theory is the optimal matching theory. So I got some matches. So basically, the idea is we have needs. We have social needs, and so we look for people who, whatever their skills might be, to match those needs. So we optimize our needs. Or we have our needs, we optimize what folks can give us. That's basically the idea. And so it makes sense. We get better support that way because people are giving us the stuff that we need. That makes sense. So if we need emotional support and somebody does not give us emotional support but more of sort of informational support, that's a problem, right? You know the whole thing, if you're taking gender and communication, and you talk about